Right, hello lads and lasses, and welcome back to Boys Down Under. And today is going to be a very emotional, but also a very deserved video for two of Celtic's modern day legends, two veterans of the club, two players whose time here at Celtic have come to an end. And really, we're just going to, go over their careers and celebrate the time and the impact they've had at Celtic. Before we go any further, though, if you guys are watching these videos and enjoying them, please remember to like it and subscribe to the channel. I don't expect any of you to subscribe. I don't expect any of you to like, so all I can do is ask, and I appreciate all of you who do that. But even if you don't want to and you're just watching the video, I thank you for that as well, because, it means a lot to me. But without further ado, let's get into it. Now, I hope you all are having a very fine Friday morning, and you know what, let's get into the actual video. So, Tom Rogic and Nir Bitton. Now, both players have spent nearly 10 years at this football club each, and we're going to talk about them separately for a little while, because they've both had different impacts at Celtic. So, let's talk about my fellow countryman, the Wizard of Oz, first, and he arrived at the club for a mere £430,000 during the January transfer window as a mere, little 20-year-old Aussie boy. He won Man of the Match on his debut, a 3-1 win at Inverness, but he was clearly still young and he had room to improve, but that improvement and development was hindered by many injuries, during that time, and he went off to Melbourne Victory, a club here in Australia, for a year and a half on loan, and ironically, he actually joined the club 2 months after Ange Postecoglou left for the national team. Now, that's just a little funny thing I thought I should add in there. But he returned to Glasgow a year and a half later and began to feature predominantly and consistently under Ronnie Deila. And a lot of people believe that 2015-2016 season was his most consistent in a Celtic jersey. He had 17 direct goal contributions across 39 appearances. And obviously he caught the eye of many teams in Europe because there were a lot of rumors he was going to leave, I can't remember that myself. I was only in year 5. But I forged through the archives to find this information, and obviously he stayed and signed a contract extension, but he put up similar numbers the second season under Brendan Rodgers with 18 direct goal contributions in 37 games. But that season of Tom Rogic was known for something more. It was known for something much more memorable to all Celtic fans around the world. That year, Tom Rogic scored one of, if not the most memorable goal for Celtic this decade. And you know what? It's going to be up there in one of the most memorable Celtic goals in history. With 1 minute till injury time begins, Tom Rogic skips away in the cup final against Aberdeen, scores a locked at 1-0. He skips away from one defender. He drives into the box. He creates that extra gap, that small gap on the side, and from an impossible angle, he absolutely fires it past Joe Lewis in net, and he secured Celtic's invincible domestic treble with one of the most memorable goals in Celtic's history. And Hampden absolutely erupted. It was scenes and it was pure wizardry from Rogic. Now, the next 3 years following that, he still had his moments of greatness, and he still had his moments of sheer and utter brilliance, but, he never hit the heights again. He was playing less and less, and the numbers he was putting up there were dwindling, and it certainly hit rock bottom under Neil Lennon, who really had no idea how to utilize Tom Rogic, in my opinion. And the thing is, I forgot to mention, there was this point in the 2018 season, right, where club and country, for once, clashed. There was a Glasgow derby coming up, but so too were Australia's upcoming friendlies for the World Cup prior to the Asian Cup. Now, Tom Rogic, he wanted to stay and play the derby, but Australia didn't let him, and he publicly stated his disappointment, and, he went out to the tabloids, and then there became a public war of words between Brendan Rodgers and Graham Arnold, who was the current Australian national team manager. It's quite funny looking back on it, but it was just one of those periods where, it was one of those really weird times where club and country clashed, and, Celtic fans expected him to be able to stay for the derby because, Tom Rogic does love a goal against Rangers, but he didn't, and he obviously was visibly and publicly disappointed with that. But regardless, the next coming years under Neil Lennon, Lennon had no idea how to utilize Tom Rogic, in my opinion. I think that sort of contributed to his lack of numbers, his lack of performances. And then it almost came to an end in the 2020 season. You know, it was rumoured Tom would be leaving Celtic for Qatar, you know, for roughly £4 million. Now, at the time, no one was too fussed, you know, including myself. He was rarely playing. A lot of people were actually surprised at how much money we could have got for Tom. But, you know, I wasn't too fussed on it. I thought, you know what, if he goes off and he continues his career there, gets a nice payday, we get £4 million. I thought it was a win-win situation at the time. But he ended up staying. The deal fell through, and it was argued, you know, looking back on it, I am so thankful it did. I am so bloody thankful that Tom never went to Qatar. And, you know, we're going to ignore the 2020-2021 season because it was absolutely shambles. But then we get to the beginning of this season. Ange is named as head coach, and Tom is looked at by the rest of the squad as, you know, as for any information, you know, to what to expect under Ange Postecoglou. And Tom only had good things to say about Ange, you know, but also for Tom himself, it placed a responsibility under his shoulders. You know, Tom played for Ange when Ange was the coach of the national team for a good 4 years, you know. Tom, he wanted to prove that he was, you know, still the same player he was back then, and he still had the quality and the ability to play week in, week out. And he wanted to prove he was still, you know, that same wizard that us Celtic fans absolutely fell in love with, you know. And he also had another responsibility. You know, he was one of the veterans at the club. You know, him, along with Nir Bitton and Callum McGregor, they were looked at as the leaders of this squad, the players to lead this club through this rebuild, you know. And Tom took it as motivation. He was training twice as much throughout the off-season, throughout the Euros, getting back into shape, and it paid off. Because in my eyes, this has topped them all. This has been Tom Rogic's best season and greatest season in a Celtic jersey. Now, the stats show he had 16 direct goal contributions this season across 50 games, so it's not as good as other seasons, but the impact he had was so much more, and it goes so much more than just goals and assists. It was vintage Rogic all season. You know, his quick feet, his exceptional ball-playing ability, beating defenders, and there were some vintage Tom Rogic goals along the way. The most notable one against Dundee United, you know, he absolutely goal of the season, without a doubt. You know, one of, if not the goal of the season for Celtic. And, you know, he's gone out on a high. He's won the league, he's won the League Cup, but I don't think he will forget, I will not forget, and no Celtic fan will forget the pure emotion when he was subbed off for one final time against Motherwell. You know, at Celtic Park, there were tears in his eyes. You know, there were visibly tears in the stadium. You know, just a standing ovation for a modern day legend of Celtic Football Club. You know, 16 trophies during his 9 years at the club, 271 appearances, 91 goals and assists. A modern day Celtic legend. He's a big game player and a player who loved a goal against the Rangers, and who doesn't love a player who loves that. And he will forever be remembered as Celtic's Wizard of Oz. And I can't thank him enough for his time at the club. You know, it's been superb. And I only wish, you know, it could have been one more year. But all good things must come to an end. And the same goes for Nir Bitton. You know, while his Celtic career may not have been as memorable as Tom Rogic's, and he may not have had as many memorable goals, he too has had an absolutely great time at Celtic, you know. He arrived at the beginning of the 2013-2014 season from Ashdod for £750,000, I believe it was. And now, while Nir Bitton never was the most skillful player, he was never the most, you know, talented player. But what he was reliable. He was Mr. Reliable. Now, he was never a consistent starter in the team, and, you know, he's like I said, he was always Mr. Reliable, unless you played him at centre back. But all jokes aside, you know, throughout these 9 years at Celtic, he has scored some memorable distance shots, and he has been up there. You know, he's been there for Celtic when we've needed him most. You know, he was never ever going to take Scott Brown's starting spot in the team. That was a given. But, you know, he still gave it his all when he was on the pitch. And this season was no different. All season, Nir Bitton has been Mr. Reliable for Celtic. A season where rotation has been key to success. And a season where there have been injuries galore. His ability for such a tall man at CDM is unheard of. You know, it's unnatural. But also this season, he's been a veteran of this Celtic squad. He's deputised Callum McGregor for the captaincy. He served as a mentor for wee Leo Labada, and I always say this, and I maintain this thought the whole way, and in every single one of my videos I talk about it. Leo Labada would not have reached the height that he did if it wasn't for Nir Bitton helping him settle into Glasgow so quickly. You know, and a great showing of father and son bonding came against St Johnstone in a 3-1 win, with Leo scoring twice and Nir scoring the other. You know, and despite, you know, Nir Bitton, he flew under the radar at Celtic, you know. He's the one thing though, he never ever was unloyal. You know, he displayed unwavering loyalty during his time at this club. You know, he could have easily left to go play somewhere else for consistent minutes week in, week out, but he has been a servant to this football club. You know, and he's ingrained himself into Celtic history. You know, he's gone out on a high as well, like Tom Rogic, you know. But he has won a total of 18 trophies at Celtic and 270 appearances with 30 goals and assists during that time. So yeah, I just want to say thank you to the both of them. They deserved a whole video to themselves. You know, I couldn't do justice in a one little segment in one video. It had to be a whole video to both of them. And if you haven't seen them yet, go watch the interviews on Celtic's YouTube channel. You know, I highly recommend them. You know, for two players who never spoke too much, who never ever really had any voice at the club. You know, you never would see them in interviews and you know, in the media. You know, it's a great viewing. You know, Nir has tear in his eyes the whole way through, and it's a great listen as well. You know, they both speak so well, and it's great to hear them reflect on their time at Celtic one last time. But that is all from me. So if you guys did enjoy this, you know, sort of emotional, sort of sentimental sort of video, please remember or consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel, and leave in the comments below your favorite moment of either Tom or either of Nir. And yeah, well, until next time, hail, hail.